From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 63. I'm excited for this one because I'm interviewing one of my absolute favorite athletes that I ever trained. I know we're not supposed to play favorites, but this is a guy who immediately lights up a room and instantly wins people over with his infectious smile, and honestly just a really wonderful guy who has devoted himself to making the world a better place. So this is going to be a really good interview that doesn't just talk about baseball, but talks a lot about the great things that he's doing back home in the Bahamas. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It's an all-in-one superfood supplement with 75 whole food sourced ingredients to support your body's nutritional needs across 5 critical areas: energy, immunity, gut health, hormonal support, and healthy aging. I'm an avid user of Athletic Greens myself, in spite of the fact that I tend to be a supplement minimalist. To me, this is a product that is much more like whole food nutritional insurance as opposed to a true supplement. The ingredients have been carefully selected at the highest quality, most natural source. You get essential vitamins and minerals, digestive enzymes, prebiotics, probiotics, and that's the zero compromise approach from the company. It's plant-based, sourced from whole foods at the highest qualities. You won't find harmful chemicals, artificial colors or flavors, preservatives, or added sugar. Really, it's perfect for folks who are gluten and dairy-free, paleo, keto, vegan-friendly, great for people who are intermittent fasting, all that fun stuff. Personally, I love it for obviously our athletes who don't get enough nutritional benefits from fruits and vegetables because they don't eat enough. So it's a way to kind of plug in holes in diets. But also, I really like it for our college and professional athletes who may have complex travel schedules where quality food options aren't always at hand. On a personal level, I'm a husband, father of 3, and an entrepreneur. We split our time between 2 states, and I'm also still an avid lifter. So life is inherently crazy, and it can be stressful, and sleep deprivation is definitely something that we encounter. So I rely on Athletic Greens for part of my immune support, and believe firmly that it's made a big difference in keeping me healthy in spite of how crazy our lifestyle is. They've got a great offer in place. If you head to athleticgreens.com/Cressey, they'll get you 20 free travel packets with your purchase. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Cressey, CRESSEY, and you can claim your special offer. Today's guest was born in the Bahamas, but came to the U.S. to attend American Heritage High School in Delray Beach, Florida, where he played baseball and football. As an outfielder, he was drafted out of high school in the 27th round of 2001 draft by the Orioles, but opted to instead attend Palm Beach Community College to play baseball. The Orioles again drafted him in the 27th round in 2002, but he instead headed to Vanderbilt. He was drafted by the Diamondbacks in the 12th round of the 2004 draft, but returned to Vanderbilt for a final season, after which he was selected in the 35th round by the Giants to start his professional career. He later earned his engineering science degree from Vanderbilt. He signed with the Giants in 2005 and worked his way up to AA before being released in 2009. After a brief stint in independent ball, he was signed by the Atlanta Braves prior to the 2010 season and worked his way up the organizational ladder over the next 2 seasons. He was called up to the majors for the first time on September 4th, 2011, and recorded his first career hit off Clayton Kershaw in his first career Major League at-bat. In doing so, he became the 6th player from the Bahamas to play in the major leagues. In the years that followed, he played for the Orioles, Twins, Rangers, Yankees, Pirates, and Dodgers. He's perhaps best known for scoring the winning run on Derek Jeter's walk-off single in his final Yankee Stadium at-bat. After retiring in 2017, he was named the Toronto Blue Jays outfield coordinator in their player development department. In February 2019, he was named as a field coordinator and minor league outfield coordinator for the San Francisco Giants. And on December 23, 2019, he was named the first base coach for the Giants, with the added responsibility of coaching Giants base runners and outfielders. Please welcome to the show, Antoan Richardson. Welcome to the show, Antoan.
Thanks for having me, man, Eric. Pleasure to be with you today.
This is going to be fun because you're the guy that literally goes into any room and you're like the governor. Like, you win people over immediately. I feel like I'm going to have thousands of raving like Antoan Richardson fans. If we actually play baseball this year, they're going to be cheering for you. I mean, at least on TV because the stands will be empty, but we're looking forward to it. So I think
Oh
that
man.
so the best place to start, I mean, and this is an awesome story. It's like I mean, somebody should make a movie about it. But you're the sixth player from the Bahamas to ever play in the major leagues, and I don't think people will necessarily, just by hearing that, appreciate what a big deal that is. Like, so talk to me a little bit about like the baseball culture growing up in the Bahamas, what it was when you were a kid, and then what it's become now.
Yeah. So I will just use the word growing, and that's what it's been. The culture's just been kind of growing and finding its identity throughout the years. But growing up, we didn't have baseball. So we still don't have baseball in high school. So I grew up playing fast pitch softball. And we had like a men's league. And I remember that when I was like younger, we like a lot of the guys would go and play in this men's league. But I had a friend, and his dad had a plot of land and basically on a farm, and just kind of started a baseball community that's grown over like the last 20, 30 years. And we would just kind of throw the baseball around on Saturdays and kind of start to learn the sport a little bit. But softball was my teacher. And then over the years, as I got playing it a little bit, I was in the minor leagues with a couple other guys, and fortunately got an opportunity to get to the big leagues. And now I think the important part of what it is where it is right now. And I think right now it's a really up and coming spot for baseball players. And I think you could see it throughout like the minor league system. A lot of really cool prospects with good opportunities to get to the big leagues, man. So it's still, I would say the culture is still finding its identity.
Mm-hmm. Is the perspective of if you're a 16-year-old in the Bahamas, is the goal just to get to the U.S. and be seen? Are guys getting scouted, actually in the Bahamas? Like, what's the dynamic for a guy who's a good athlete and with potential there to actually get to the U.S. to play?
So this is a tricky question, man.
Yeah.
I usually get a little kickback on this one, but I have not been a fan of the model of get 16 years old and just trying to sign.
Yeah.
I've been of the mindset of understanding your situation, obviously, and making it an individual thing and figuring out like, do I need to go to school and do I need to develop a little bit more? And so I think it has shifted a little bit, right? So the culture right now is a lot of young men. The thought is like, what do I have to do to sign? And that actually breaks my heart when they ask me that question, to be honest. And because I want them to ask the question, what do I need to do to get to the big leagues? And then we can kind of talk about like what that path could look like. And so I'm a big advocate on kind of just continuing to educate these young men about their different opportunities, because I think the path to like ultimately where they want to get is just going to look so different and unique for each and every one of us. And it's just important that they understand that and not feel as if they have to rush to that point to get signed to start that career. So ultimately, it is, I think it's growing right now in sense of like guys want to sign at 16, but I'm hoping personally just to kind of just continue to educate our parents and as well as our young players. So that they continue to make informed decisions about their futures.
Absolutely. I mean, do you see a trend of players starting to recognize like this is something that, you can leverage baseball to get a great education that might not otherwise be there for you? And if so, like, what's the path for that? I know obviously you came to the U.S. when you were how old?
I was 14 years old when I came to the U.S. But not as yet. And I think the narrative hasn't gotten around yet where it's like, hey, I could use this to leverage it a little bit more for these other things. So once again, I do think like we're still, because our culture is still growing and we still need to play a lot more baseball in the Bahamas. And I think when that opportunity comes around, being able to get guys to play a little bit more, we could have an opportunity to develop them a little bit better, which is going to create more opportunities for them to go to schools and have access to scholarships. And I think the challenge is financially too. It's really expensive, right? To play, to go to college. And if you're not going to get a scholarship, that's another hurdle sometimes you have to get over. And 11.7 scholarships in colleges with baseball, and like Bahamian players not necessarily qualifying for financial aid. So it is a big hurdle. It's a lot of hurdles. And I think, one of the plans is just continue to research and find information on how we could help players get more of those opportunities, find money for them to get to college. Because I do think like we have a lot of talented young players, and a lot of them were going to miss that opportunity to get to the big leagues because they would have started their career too soon. And I know that might sound kind of crazy and wild, but I think a couple of them would benefit from spending a little time developing in college for a couple of years, whether it's a junior college, 4-year program before taking that journey.
I love that. We're going to come back and talk about your awesome work with Project Limestone. So we'll come back to that at the end. But I'm curious. Let's talk on your story a little bit. So, I read up a little bit on you, and I already know you well, but it was good. I had to do some extra prep on this. And so how does a kid who's cut from his 7th grade softball team in the Bahamas wind up being an all-state player in Florida and a graduating salutatorian at his high school? I was a salutatorian too, so you're in good company. So what was the kind of trend that got you there? What changed?
You know what? I think it was just making the most important thing the important thing. And I think it was just, I wanted to have fun. And I think I think it's two parts, right? So it's an educational component and it's an athletic component. From an athletic side, I wanted to have fun and I wanted to play with my friends. And so that in itself made me decide, after getting cut, it's like, all right, what do I have to do to be able to play with my friends and have fun? Mm-hmm. And that was my focus. It was just and then I just went out and I just continued to train. And not that I knew what I was doing, but I just was out there trying to do stuff to get better. Mm-hmm. And eventually just got to a point where I was good enough to get on the team, because when I got on the team, it was an opportunity to play, but I was a hell of a cheerleader, I'll tell you that. And then it just each year, you just continue, to try to improve a little bit at a time by just doing what you think you need to do until you get some guidance from different people along that path on what you could do. And the next year, you're playing a little bit, you're on the bench. And then before I knew it, I was had an opportunity just to play a lot more, and then just kind of allowed my athletic ability to be a friend to me, and just try to really embrace the uniqueness of the skill set. And then from an academic standpoint, I think once I got to America, it was just laser focus. And I think once again, a lot of my motivating things is just the country in itself. And I knew that once I got to the U.S. that this was an opportunity to create a pathway for more Bahamians and young people to have opportunities. And I just wanted to be responsible with that opportunity. And so it was going to be really important that I was a good ambassador for our country. And so I wanted to be a good ambassador on both sides of the thing. I went on and off the field. And so it was just important to me. Once again, I got to the first statement, right? Making the most important thing, and making it really important. And because that responsibility of creating this pathway and being an ambassador just drove me into my books a little bit more, which just allowed me to end up, graduating as salutatorian.
I don't think people realize that's, I'm gonna sing your praises a little bit. That's a really big recognition for someone at that age to recognize that you're also paving the way for future generations. I'm not sure that a lot of 16, 17-year-olds actually think like that. And I feel like you've thought like that to this day. There's always been a perception of looking out for the next generation. Is that something that's drilled into you early at a young age in the Bahamas, or is that something that you feel like you acquired over the years as a responsibility as you became more front and center as a successful athlete?
So I think it's definitely just a culture in the Bahamas where it is this thought of a village is going to raise a child. And I think, growing up without a father, I think, being able to be around my uncles and my grandfathers who kind of stepped in for that role is just understanding how important they all played that role in taking care of me, and them wanting to be a part of just being a support for me. And I think, watching my grandmother just take care of so many people, it just started, it became ingrained in me. And you just kind of get to the point where you understand that it's really important to take care of your brother, or take care of the people around you, and making sure that you leave places better than you met them, and so that the person behind you could really enjoy what you just had an opportunity to enjoy. And so to answer your question, it's just I think a lot of it's embedded in our culture because we're just so small and we're just really connected. And you just know everybody, so you just want to be responsible with that.
Absolutely. So out of high school, you turned down a full ride to Brown University to stay, closer to, your new home in South Florida. You went to Palm Beach Community College. So fill me in on the rationale for that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your Vandy experience thereafter.
So I don't know, even when I reflect and I try to think, like, if I had a good reasoning behind it, I don't know, but I know this. So I was going to go to Brown to play. So football was the main thing I was going to go to Brown to play. I remember the football coaches were the ones that really engaged with me, and I was going to have an opportunity to play baseball as well. And, I just I was a young man from the Bahamas, and I was going to be the first person from my household to go to college. And I think a lot of it was just a lack of information on my part. And I just didn't necessarily recognize how prestigious Brown University was. And so for me, it's and I'm glad I didn't, right? Because now I was able just to make an authentic decision based on what I guess was in my heart. And I realized that at that point in time, I was like, well, I don't know if I really want to do football. And I recognized that I'm 5'6" or 5'7" on a good day, 160 pounds. And I just didn't want my mom cringing every Saturday to watching me run around the field playing football. And so I think that allowed me to kind of reconsider. And, at the same time, I had an offer to go play baseball at the Citadel. And so, but what really threw a wrench into everything, I got drafted that year as well. And when I got drafted, it really put me in a bind because I didn't know what to do. I remember calling my mom and I was like, hey, I just got drafted. I don't know what to do. And she asked me, she's like, what is a draft? And so
was the response, Mom, it's what's going to happen the next 15 consecutive years for me. You were drafted 27 times.
So I thought, and so at that point in time, it was really just trying to just make the best decision. And at that time I had the scouts calling me and hey, you need to sign. And I just think education was ingrained in me. And so I was like, you know what, I need to go to school. And so I was getting ready to go to Citadel, and it's wait, I'll find a junior college. Maybe I find a junior college, and then you don't have to commit for X amount of years. And then you could, maybe sign after the first year. And I don't know, it just got to a point where I was it felt right. And once again, I can't tell you exactly what it was. But I think the flexibility of being able to go to a junior college, and I'm sure, being close to home played a role in making that decision. And so I wish I had a bad explanation to be no, this is what the sign was. But I think it was just lack of information, but I'm really happy with the decision.
Well, and think about it. So you were drafted again after your year at junior college, and then turned it down, but wound up going to Vanderbilt. So what I don't think a lot of these people know is, so we're talking about 2002 is when you started, the fall of 2002, was it, at Vandy?
2003. So it would have been 2003. Yeah.
So, but either way, you were at Vandy before Vandy is what we know it as today, right? You were there in the early days. I know you and Flash have Ryan Flaherty have had some good conversations about it. What attracted you to it back then? And obviously it surged forward in the time that you were there as well. What was different about Vandy then versus now?
Yeah. Good question. So Coach Corbin was my first year at Vanderbilt was Coach Corbin's second year. I think just initially, Coach Eric Bakich, who was the head coach at Michigan, when he came down to Florida and he recruited me, I just remember our time together, we just connected right away. And so I think right from there, it was a good sign. He was just very genuine. I remember just going to dinner and what that looked like, and it just felt at home. And ultimately, I went on a visit up there, and I'll tell a funny story with Eric, but I went on a visit up there, and I just remember thinking, what a cool opportunity to get a really cool education, a really good education, and play against the best competition in the country. And I also recognized at that time that I was a really athletic person and not necessarily a baseball player. And so at that point in time, I recognized if I did take that opportunity to go to University of Miami or the University of South Carolina, I might not have gotten an opportunity to play right away, but I felt like I was going to have an opportunity to compete right away at Vanderbilt and get a chance to play. And that was important, right? Coming back to the original question that you asked me is what's making the most important thing the important thing? And it was to have fun. I want to play. And so that kind of led me to Vandy, is just the opportunity to play. And then ultimately, I remember I was on my recruiting trip, and it was the first weekend of like SEC series play. And I remember, and it was the first recruiting trip I went on. I didn't go to any of those other colleges that were calling me at this point in time. I was supposed to go to South Carolina after this. And so it was 65 degrees, and I'm in the press box about to watch the game. And I said, Coach, I was like, if it gets any colder than this, I can't come. And I was like, and he says to me, he's like, Antoine, this is as cold as it gets. And my first practice was in snow. So, but once again, I don't regret the decision one bit.
No doubt. I mean, Vanderbilt's obviously become something pretty spectacular. What do you think it is about Coach Corbin that, what I think, and I love talking to Tim. He's always a amazing guy to converse with, but it's one thing to be successful. It's another thing altogether to sustain success like he has and continue to improve. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about something that happened, a long time ago. What are we, 18 years past that, or 17 years past that? What is it that's made, it's such a tradition that's carried forward?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, he just cares about people. And I think he's just made that important. And it's just something that's authentic, right? So it's not something that he's just doing to get people to come to the school. He just really wants what's best for everybody that walks through those doors. And he wants you to leave that program a better human being. And I think in that process, you just become, and it's probably cliche, but you just become a family, and you just really care about the next person. And so I just think that has allowed us to thrive. And then obviously, like he's smart, right? And in terms of, and he's been a really good student of the game, and he's a really good teacher. But the one thing that I would say that I've recognized and learned to appreciate more over the years is just his ability to adapt. And I think like he knows what he needs to be for any particular person at any given time, and then he knows what he needs to be for that particular team in any given year. And I think that in itself has been really refreshing just to watch unfold, and how he's been able to have the sustainability. And I think a big role in that is just his ability to adapt to what's thrown in front of him.
I feel like every conversation you have with Corbs, he's always asking a lot of questions. He's doing a lot of listening. Like he's always trying to find what's working and what isn't in different scenarios so that he can figure out how to apply it at Vandy. That's always a takeaway from me from every dialogue we have, is he wants to learn.
Absolutely. All
right. So we got shift baits. It's your turn to teach here. So in your career, you swiped 331 bases and were caught only 58 times. That's an 85% success rate. But what's most impressive to me as you go and you actually look at it is that your steal percentage got even better as you advanced to the higher levels. In fact, I don't think you've ever been thrown out in the big leagues. And there was like a year in AAA with the Yankees where it was like 26 out of 27 or something like that in AAA. So I'm curious, like, what was it? I mean, you were always fast, right? And theoretically, you probably didn't get faster as time went on, and you aged a little bit, and the seasons got longer and longer, and you're playing in the outfield every day. So I'm curious, like, what is it that made you a better base stealer over the course of time? What lessons did you learn that you can pass on to the coaches and players that are listening to this?
Well, I defied everything about the human body, and I did get faster. No, I think like I said earlier, I think for a long time I got by on my athletic ability, and obviously I think that's helped me through the whole process. But just became smarter, right? And I don't think I lost my aggressiveness. It just became smarter and recognized like what I did really well, and just really tried to find ways to like make that strength better. So just understanding pitching tendencies and kind of looking to see what they were doing, and starting to understand exactly what my body was doing, right? And understand like how I can get better jumps, and how can I extend my leads and whatnot. So I just think I got smarter, and I know it's probably not like the philosophical answer or the great answer, but I just got a little bit smarter, and I just really worked on the craft, like worked on the jumps and studied the pitchers, and didn't take any second for granted.
I was gonna say, did you watch video of opposing pitchers?
No, I didn't, and I think it was just more. It was more because I don't know how accessible it was for me, and or if I just didn't even know how accessible it was, and so I would just kind of try to keep a little mental note on them. I did a really good job of being able to remember guys.
Yep.
But I'll find out one thing and I'm just like, all right, this is my thing, and then I think this, and then another part of it maybe doesn't help, but just that competitiveness of just wanting to like be really good at this. And I knew that this was my speed was my thing. And I would be more frustrated when I got thrown out than like any other aspect of the game. Like if you wanted me to get emotional, like it's when I got thrown out because I just demanded like success. I demanded like I thought I should never get thrown out.
I mean, so, it's interesting now that you're first base coach for the Giants. It's like the perfect role for a guy who took that much pride in stealing bases. So it's going to be fun tasks ahead. But we can't have a conversation about base running without talking about the Jeter walk-off, right? Like how many million interviews have you given about this?
This is the first one.
First one. There you go. So I'll put my unique spin on it. I'm on a JetBlue flight. I believe it was from Florida back to Massachusetts, and it was basically the entire sporting world was panning back to Jeter. So they were switching every station back to it. So I think I had like Sports Center on while I was working on my laptop, and I look up. And they're going to Yankee Stadium as Jeter's coming up for presumably his last at bat. And you're pinch hitting. I'm like talking to myself and like, I can't even talk to anybody about this. Like I can't text my wife, anything like that. I'm like, Antoan's pinch run. And so what's going through your head as you get pinch run or as you pinch run in the ninth with Jeter coming up?
So it's just, oh man, it was a lot of emotion. So the whole time you're watching this game, you're like a fan because you're like recognizing like what's happening in front of you, right? The last game at Yankee Stadium. And like, I wish I could say I was locked in the whole game in terms of like as a teammate, but I was like literally just enjoying this. I wish I had popcorn on the bench, to be honest. And so like now we go into the ninth inning now, and if you remember, we go into the ninth inning. I want to say we had a 3-run lead going into the ninth inning, and we bring our closer in, who's been lights out the whole year. And so I'm still just enjoying this moment of like watching this and the fans are shouting, and it's just really really loud, and just like wow, like. I've never experienced nothing like this in my life. And I remember like CC was on the bench and CC's like, man, it feels like a playoff game tonight, And it was just like so unreal. And all of a sudden, I think like Adam Jones hits like a 2-run home run. And I think like somebody else hits a solo shot and it's like 5-5. And I'm just like, oh crap, I better get loose. Right? And so, I started to get loose, anticipating that, like they might use me in the next inning. Sure enough, Jose Perella comes up, gets a base hit, and then I get the first base. And I think even still at this point in time, I recognize that Gardner's going to bunt. And so I'm not like really like frantic about anything, So he gets it down, I get the second base. And I think when I get the second base, not recognizing that Jeter was coming up, it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And like all of a sudden, like, you get the chant that everyone, Derek Jeter. And it's just like, and I feel like I was in a movie as I stand on second base. I look up into the stands and I feel like it was like Little Big League or like, I can't remember the movie, but when the guy just walks up for the first time, he's just like mouth open and just like, oh my goodness. And that's how I felt. And I literally remember telling myself, like, I had to like, hey, wait, you got a job to do, right?
Wasn't Flash playing third too? Wasn't he busting your chops?
He was. Flash was playing third base.
I can't remember, what wasn't the line, like, he's going to make you famous, Twan, or something like that? I can't remember what it was.
Probably. But so anyway, so I get there and I'm on second base and just really, I'm really enjoying the moment and I'm glad I did, right? Like, because I think sometimes we're so locked into executing that we forget to enjoy the moment. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. Like, and I'm like thinking little guy from the Bahamas, like, and this is like unbelievable, like what I'm getting to experience right now. And then I kind of lock in, right? And so I just appreciated the fact that I was able to like enjoy those 10 seconds, but then I locked in. And, I got ready and he obviously hit the base hit and I get going. And I thought Thompson was gonna stop me at third base because it was a really hard hit ball. Markakis was in right field. And so I kind of started to slow up right as I was about to hit the bag, anticipating that I was going to get a stop sign. And all of a sudden, I see him waving me home. And I'm like, oh, crap, I got to go. And so I like turning on the burners, like even trying to turn on even more. Because now as I'm running, I'm recognizing that like one, this could be a potential to win and run. Two, if I get thrown out, I might not be able to leave the stadium for a couple of days. And so I'm just like, and I'm thinking like, I just gotta find a way to score. I don't care what I do, find a way to score. And I get close. I see Caleb Joseph starting to prepare to receive the ball, and I'm like, holy crap! Like this could end. Might not end well. And I never dive head first. I think that was the first time I ever dove head first in my career at home plate. But it was like one of those situations, like by all means necessary, you got to make this happen. A part of it was so I could be able to leave Yankee Stadium, but then two, just wanting to like create that moment or be a part of that moment for Derek, right? Like I was like, what a crazy and awesome way for him to leave Yankee Stadium, and it slid in, man, and I just remember the umpire saying safe because McCann was telling me to slide, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, should I be excited? So I jumped up halfway and I got back down. And just like, it was pretty cool moment, man. And I once again, I get to say this a lot in this story, but I'm really glad that I had a chance to experience that.
I'm really glad you were safe too.
Yes.
Probably not as glad as you are. So, all right. So obviously that's an incredible experience, but that's one of 8 organizations that you played for. And I'm sure it goes without saying that you enjoyed your time with some more than others. I'm curious if there were like certain takeaways along the way from, you started out with the Giants, obviously, and you spent time with the Pirates, you spent time with, a bunch of different organizations. Were there certain ones that stood out that, were impactful in the lessons that you took with you, especially now that you've moved to the coaching ranks, things that you recognized back then that were awesome that you wanted to make sure that are a part of your baseball experiences moving forward?
Yeah. But to answer that question, yeah, I think it was a lot of really cool experiences. And I think just to be fair to the other coaches in my life, like it happened from before pro ball, you know what I mean? And stealing some of those experiences. But I just think, really the coaches that were just really empathetic and the coaches that like, really cared about their players and found a way to show you that. And I think also like the coaches that, had the ability to kind of like what I talked about Corbin earlier, like being able to adapt to whoever he's dealing with. And I think the coaches being able to understand that like I have to use different cues and I have to use different language with different people to help them get to the objective. And I think teams that spent a lot of time investing in that development for their coaches and making them aware of it were the teams that were successful. And I think they all had their pros. But at the time, I remember when I was with the Braves organization, I thought it was really cool. I just remember having this feeling as a player that the Braves player development group, it felt as if they really were confident that they could make anybody a Major League Baseball player. And I thought that was really cool. I just remember feeling as a player that, and they were going to teach you so well that you're going to have that opportunity. And sure enough, you looked at their team and you saw so many homegrown players, and it was like wow, like they just do a really good job of making sure like they executing these details. But ultimately, I just think a lot of it was just like the one thing I think stands out is just like the coaches who had the ability to use different languages, use different cues, and figure out like, okay, like just recognizing it's not a one exercise fix all or one word fix all, and them working really hard to figure out how do I get through to this particular player to make sure that he can tap into this thing that I see.
As you look back, like, and now that you're in the coaching ranks, I have to assume it makes you ponder like a lot of the coaches and the cues you've received over the years. Like what cues, what coaching strategies, what drills made absolutely no sense to you? Like what practice would you change that, what were the things that drove you nuts that you'll never use yourself?
Ooh, so once again, right, I feel if I say right now, like this thing I would never ever use, like I feel like I would be limiting myself. And the reason I say that is because I thought it was silly and I thought it was eyewash doesn't mean that it's not going to be something corrective for somebody else. And I definitely need to respect that, right? So, but I do know, I do wish no one told me just hit the ball on the ground and run. I do know that, right? But outside of that, to be honest, I can't sit here and tell you today, like, this is just one thing that I hated and I feel like I never did other than maybe hit the ball on the ground and run. But because I do think that that one movement, as silly as it might be or maybe, like could be corrected for someone else. It just didn't work for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I keep them all in my toolbox.
Yeah. What have been the biggest adjustments for you as you've transitioned from playing to coaching? Like, are there certain things that you've had to learn, like that, cues that worked for you that don't work for someone else, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, honestly, I've just tried to keep it really like simple, and I just try to remember that like, what first and foremost is like, how do you transfer information, right? And so how do you
Yeah.
get like this stuff that you have to somebody else? And so for me, it's just like what we're doing right now is just being able to have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
and identifying what people are going home with people, and so that you could be able to have them open up. Um, and I think like ultimately the way I try to approach it is three things, right? So one is I want everything to be rooted in simplicity. So I just want everything to be as simple as possible when we get it to that particular player. And that looks different for each player,
Mm-hmm.
right? But our goal is how can I simplify it as best as I can for this particular player? So think about how complicated the season is. We 200 games, you're traveling all this time, you're not getting all the sleep that you need, all the numbers and data. And so like
Yeah.
for me is like, how do I take away from that? How do I subtract from that? And so just trying to simplify anything I give them. The second part is just like really, really being empathetic, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just really respecting the fact that they have gotten to this point and
Mm-hmm.
and they got to this point for a reason. And so respecting the fact and honoring that first and foremost. And then the second part to that is challenging that, and challenging them with new ideas and concepts to allow them to maybe explore something else that they didn't think about. But I think it starts with making sure that you honor what they have done, right? And you don't want to come in there and just be like, you need to do it this way. So my approach is just making sure they honor what they've done, respect that. And then the last piece to it is just promoting creativity. And and what I mean by that is like I just try to stay away from comparisons and
Yeah.
to other people, because I feel like it just if I'm asking myself to be like Eric Cressey, then am I going to give myself an opportunity to be better than Eric Cressey, right? And so I think it's just asking them to say, hey, like how good can you be? How unique can you be? How can we use the skill set that you have
Mm-hmm.
and just make you flourish for who you are and make your name for yourself?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a lot, but those are the three things that I like really try to like emphasize, whenever I'm working with a player.
You never want to it's a Brian Kaplan line we use often. It's like, don't coach the different out of somebody. Sometimes it's leveraging the
Yeah,
different that makes them, a special big leaguer.
yeah. So real quick, and I would say that is like Gene Glenn, like one of the guys I like really respect in the game, and like was a tremendous coach to me. And I think I called him when I first started coaching. The advice he gave me was he's like, Antoine, he's like, sometimes the player's going to be able to do stuff that you can't teach. And that's like right there with Brian saying. And so it's
Yep.
really important to like understand that and just like, hey man, I ain't even going to mess with that. I don't know what it is or what's going on, but he's getting there really, really quick. I don't know if I want to mess with his jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I imagine you find similar things when you training with players, with athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're tasked with developing outfielders and base runners in addition to your work as a first base coach. So let's talk about some low hanging fruit for, let's say high school athletes on both fronts. So if you want to work with, base running first, like what are you teaching in that younger population? Because we both know, like you can win a lot of high school games just by
Hmm.
being crazy aggressive on the base paths and making pitchers and catchers uncomfortable. Where do you start, in terms of dealing with those younger athletes? And honestly, like it probably feeds into what do you see in these guys that get into pro ball and they don't have some of these core competencies locked down?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just understanding um, your value, right? So understanding what the value of your output. So at any given point in time, like how important is your out at any given time? I think is a good thing to understand. And what I mean by that is like, is the risk worth the reward? Um, but to simplify it even more, I think of two things, right? Always know where you're at. And so, always know where you're at on the field. Cause if you know where you're at, I feel like there's a comfort level to that, right? I use this with some of the players now, and I say like, if I drop you in the middle of the jungle without a GPS, and I tell you find your way somewhere, how confident do you feel? And then I say, if I drop you in the jungle, in the middle of the jungle with a GPS and I actually get somewhere, how confident do you feel? And it's always just like understanding where you're at. So that just gives you some comfort and you just know maybe how you can stretch your limits one way or the next. And then the next part of it is just like, how do you continue to create movement, right? So like a body in motion stays in motion. So when we're taking our leads and these different things, like, can we stay in continuous movement unless we're on the base, right? We're diving back or we're getting a sign, but like, how do we create continuous movement? And even like, you know, from a steel break standpoint, right? Like I might create some type of rhythm in there, some type of movement to be able to like to flow into that break. So those are the two things I would encourage young players to focus on, other than getting as fast as you can.
I mean, that goes without saying too. You know, what is the saying? Speed never goes into a slump. So.
Yeah, that's what they said, but I went into a lot of slumps, man, Eric. So
I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't have been swinging down. Maybe that's what it was. Right? So let's talk about the actual outfielder side of things, right? Because we're you know, we've had AJ Pollock on, and you know, talked to Colton Wong a little bit more the infield side of things, and you know, it's always cool to see guys that, you know, they always talk about, you know, home runs get love in contract negotiations and all that stuff, but defense is important, but you know, just doesn't necessarily get the attention that it probably deserves. From an outfielding standpoint, what do you see on the youth levels, and then obviously what are you working on the most with your big league guys?
Yeah. So so first about the defense and the love part of it, I think it's some guys like there's a lot of guys never mind. There's a lot of guys that are making a lot of money that are really good defenders. Let me just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But
fair point.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of correlation once again with speed. So I like to work a lot with strength training department, right? And I think speed is a big correlation, I think, between speed and being able to make some of those plays. But I've also seen guys like Alex Gordon that haven't necessarily always ranked as the fastest guys in the league, but still win Gold Gloves. And so just really focusing on how fast can you get to top speed. And so a lot of the stuff we like to talk about is like, how can we own the first couple of steps and get to top speed as fast as we can. And I think I like to start there. And then find creative ways for each individual to be able to do that. And then after that, you know, you start to work on some other things, right? Whether it's, you know, our routes, you know, just staying athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Like just encouraging guys, like just catch the ball, but try to stay as athletic as possible. And does that mean like, you know, you don't have to get behind every ball if like being more athletic is catching it with one hand to make a spin throw. And so those would be two things, man. I'm always telling guys, hey, let's win those first couple of steps, and let's stay athletic.
Awesome. And does that apply like to the big leagues as much, or is that an assumed by the time you're actually playing outfield in the big leagues?
No, I think I try not to assume anything, man. I just try to like once again back to that empathetic part of it, just understand what they know and what they've done, and just kind of encourage them, right? Like, because I do think like, you know, I try to go back to physics sometimes and think about some of the laws in physics where you talk the body in motion staying in motion, and just encouraging them like, hey man, if I start 2 steps behind you and I'm jogging, and when I'm jogging let me start over. So we have a 5-yard gap. I'm on the 0-yard line. You're on the 5-yard line. When I get to the 4-yard line, we're both, you can now go, and we're going to race to the 20-yard line. And that momentum I have usually allows me to win those first couple of steps. And so, yes, to answer your question, like these are things that we talk about a lot at the major league level. And this is a strong point of emphasis. Because we do think, and I think a lot of people do work on it, but I think there's some correlation into guys being able to do as best as they can and maximizing their value as an outfielder.
I like that. And so we always do a lightning round on the tail end of this. So I've got a few questions for you, and they're quick questions for me, but they can be as long as you want on the answer. So the first one actually piggybacks on this last one. So give us one must-watch base runner and a must-watch outfielder in pro baseball. If a young player's here is watching and they want to, you know, be fundamentally sound in both those regards, who would you encourage them to check out?
Ooh, man. So a must watch base runner. I would say check out Mookie Betts. Mm-hmm. One of the really cool things I saw, like I just saw him take so many advances on like guys like not paying attention, and it's like he's always keeping his feet moving until he makes a decision that he's not going anymore. I thought that was really, really cool.
And he makes everything look so easy. And maybe that's because he keeps everything moving. But like, you remember that throw from the right field corner that it looked like he was literally just playing catch, and he unleashed the ball like 280 feet like it was nothing. There's probably something to be said about the stay active part.
No doubt about it. I mean, I feel like you could look at Mookie for both of those things.
Yeah,
right?
that's
like
a good point.
Play,
There's a reason he was an MVP, right?
Yeah, but if I had to maybe think about an outfielder, I would probably actually, I know he's more versatile, but Kiki Hernandez, and I just say it because, like, once again, like, when you look at where he ranks in terms of like speed with a lot of outfielders, he's not necessarily in the top echelon, but when you talk about guys that are maximizing their value and being one of the better defenders, when he's out there, he's been really, really good. So that's a guy, like, I think you could learn a few things from.
That's a big one. That's a Giants guy complimenting a Dodgers guy too.
I'm in trouble.
This is unprecedented in the media. Oh, it's been an unprecedented year, so we might as well roll it, right?
Hey, art of war. The art of war.
There you go. All right, so one of the things I always say is, like, the best guests are the retired guests, because you can be honest, right? Like, if I ask you in the middle of your career, what's the hardest pitch for you to hit? Like, you're not going to shoot me straight because you never know who's listening. So they don't want to give away their secrets, but you're retired and you can spill the beans. So what pitch for you was impossible to hit?
Anything that was a breaking ball, man. I if it wasn't straight and if it moved, then I was in trouble, man.
Yeah.
But when you grow up in the softball, now you're gonna hit something small. It just makes it more challenging.
So, in that vein, who absolutely dominated you during your career, and who did you love to face?
Who didn't dominate me, right? Well,
first career hit off Clayton Kershaw. So
maybe we should just run with that. Maybe we should just run with that one, right? I don't know if I dominated anybody, but I do remember this, and he probably wouldn't. But so Scherzer, when he first signed and actually in the Pro Bowl, his first game was against the team I was on in the minor leagues, the San Jose Giants, and he threw a 7-inning no hitter, and so I just remember not being able to pick up the baseball. We weren't doing spin rates and stuff at that time, but I'm pretty sure it probably was at a high spin rate.
Yeah.
And so I felt absolutely no chance and completely dominated by Scherzer.
It was that funky attack angle with a ball that took off before everybody was doing it. It was cool. So it was definitely unique. That's a good one. All right. So we're going to shift gears. We got to talk about Project Limestone. So, and I'll give you I'll say this. So you retired. And you were in town, you came over to dinner at the house. My wife and I were in our kitchen talking with you. And I just remembered, like, so my wife's sister, Julia, runs a not-for-profit charity in Lewiston, Maine. And they do some amazing stuff in the community with after-school programs and helping Somalian and Sudanese immigrants to the country get adjusted to their new surroundings. And, I mean, she basically keeps the town running. And I heard the passion that she displays in your voice as you talked about it. And obviously taking care of folks back home in the Bahamas is near and dear to you. So tell us a little bit more about this charity and how it came about and what it is today.
Yeah. And so, I think athletics and academics has just played a really big role in my life. And so I kind of wanted just to make sure to create opportunities, for others who, wanted to, have some of the opportunities I had or even more, and use those two vehicles as a resource to help them gain those things. And so we just decided that we wanted to use those two platforms to create environments and spaces for young people to be curious, to be learners, and use that as motivation to, like, maybe go after something that they probably thought that they couldn't achieve. And I remember sitting down and just kind of thinking, like, how do you do this? And it's funny because I love to tell the story about the name, because so the Bahamas is made up of mostly limestone rock, but limestone is a really porous material. It by itself is not very sturdy. The wind and water would just kind of like demolish it. And it's like made up of a bunch of different materials, right? So you got this rock, but like when it's cultivated the correct way, you can use it to build structures that stand the test of time. Like we have forts in the Bahamas from the 1700s that made a limestone. And so the thought there is, first of all, it's like, you know what, if we do this thing together, then we have an opportunity to be really, really unique and really, really strong. And so, you know, it started with that. And, you know, it's just been like, how do you continue to give, access to all, right? Create opportunities for all. And I think, our goal is just always like, how do we create access? How do we give access to those who may not have it?
That's awesome. Oh, I would encourage everybody to check it out. It's projectlimestone.org. I'm going to kick things off and make a donation myself, and I would encourage everybody that's listened to do so as well, just because it's a cool cause. And let's be honest, we need a lot more Antoan Richardsons in the world, and it sounds like you're working hard to mentor the next generation. And you know, so I'm also curious, you know, and I think maybe it's a loaded question to wrap up with, but you know, you're a black guy in baseball. And right now it's, there are people that are speaking out with what's going on in the world. And, I'm sure you heard the podcast with Jimmy Rollins and Torrey Hunter and LaTroy Hawkins and Ryan Howard. It was outstanding to hear what they had gone through. I'm curious, you know, about your experiences, you know, both in the Bahamas as you tried to get in the baseball world, what you've experienced since you came here, and, you know, and obviously just as importantly, like suggestions on how we as coaches, parents and players in the game can work to make things better in these crazy times.
Yeah. So, you know, it is really when I reflect on it, Eric, is really, it's a tough reflection time. You know what I mean? And you really do get emotional when you start to really consider some of the things that you would have, you know, had to endure. And I think, for me, like, there's a lot of sadness there just because I guess I don't know if I'm naive or what it was, but it's just like you just kind of accepted the treatment that you were receiving because I thought that like this is normal and this is supposed to happen, right? And so I just know that I want to be and I'm going to be for, you know, equality and freedom and justice. And I think more importantly is that, you know, it's motivated me and reminded me like why we are like doing Project Limestone, right? And it's because we want to make sure that we continue to educate our young people. We want to make sure we continue to create access. We want to continue to make sure we empower them, for them to understand that, you know, that they do matter, no matter what circumstances society may tell them. And then to your question about the coaches, I don't know if it's like a correct answer in this situation, but I do know that at least I really feel strongly that's important to just reach out, you know, out to your players and all of your players, and just kind of find out how this time is affecting them and allow that to drive the conversation. Because I do think if you go in there premeditated, it's just not gonna be authentic. And right now we just need some truth right now, right? We need some truth. We need some authenticity, more than ever. And players feel that. And I think, you know, we just need to make sure that we're giving that to them. And I would even say, like, you know, you asked about for the players, like even with our coaches, right? Like even with each other, just making sure we're reaching out and just being authentic. And if you ask somebody like how they feeling about it, like make sure you're listening, and make sure you're hearing what they're saying and you're hearing their story. If you're just asking because it's the cool thing to do right now, don't waste your time because you're just not gonna have that impact that you need to have to help that change. And I was just saying, if you care. And if you feel something in your heart, in your belly, like don't ignore that nudge. Go ahead and explore that curiosity, ask questions, reach out to your friends, get lots of different perspectives, and help you. I think it's no different than, you know, in baseball, we hate saying this, right? We hate saying, and the question's like, why do we do that? And we hate the answer that says, because we've always done it. Yeah. And so, I think more now than ever, like, you know, if you're in this baseball community, this is one of those things that's, you know, because we always done it is not going to be acceptable. And we need to explore why things are the way they are, and just really challenge, our actions and make sure to reflect our true thoughts, right? And not necessarily, we haven't just adopted actions and behaviors that society has passed down to us, and just making sure that those are ours, and we have challenged those things that we know, and those are our true feelings and emotions that are being displayed. Thanks for that opportunity to talk about that, man.
I think it's a good. I think anytime you hear like points reiterated, like that's where things get really, really compelling. And it's interesting as I was listening to you say that. So I had a conversation with Jacoby Brissett last week. Jacoby's the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He's an African American male playing what is traditionally been a white position. He made the comment. He's like, if you watch any movie, basically the quarterback, the star of the movie is always a white guy. And I'm like, I never thought about that. He pointed it out to me, and I asked him, like, what can we do better? Like, where does this start? And he said exactly what you just said. He's like, you have to have the conversations, and just speak to it, because you never know when you're going to come up with something that is going to make somebody feel comfortable in a situation where they weren't comfortable previously. Cause you just don't know about it if you don't ask.
No doubt.
So it was good feedback, and it's good to hear it from you, because you're one of the more articulate guys out there. So I appreciate you, singing the important words. So with that said, awesome time. I appreciate you joining us as always. You're one of my favorite people to catch up with. Folks can find you on both Twitter and Instagram. It's Antoan Richardson 242, or excuse me, it's A Richardson 242 on Twitter. And we'll be sure to spread the word. Again, it's projectlimestone.org. Really, really cool project that you got working in the Bahamas, and we're going to make sure to support it. So thanks so much for taking the time, man, and we wish you the best with the season ahead. Hopefully we can get underway soon.
No doubt, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's been really, really fun, and much love, man. And yeah, please do, if you check out anything, even if you don't check out my personal stuff, please do check out Project Limestone, and just like us on Instagram, and just kind of follow us, man. And any support and encouragement is always loved, and that could just be a word of encouragement. So thank you, Cress. Much love, brother. And anytime, look forward to catching up in person soon.
Absolutely. Hope to see you soon. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review to read on iTunes. We welcome your suggestions for future guests and questions. Just email elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you next episode.